Okay, so in this presentation, I'm going to talk about continuous discovery. More specifically, I'm going to outline what continuous discovery is, and then, as the title suggests, I'm going to talk about some of the common pitfalls that teams experience when attempting continuous discovery. And really, we'll look at the question, is continuous discovery the holy grail of user research, or is it more of a poison chalice? So I'll talk about how to avoid some of those common pitfalls, and then point out some good resources to find out more about continuous discovery. So you might have heard about continuous discovery, but what is it? Well, Interaction Design Foundation defines continuous discovery as an approach to user research using agile teams, where research is conducted as small, frequent activities throughout the product development lifecycle. And as Teresa Torres, who's a big advocate of continuous discovery, and actually author of the book Continuous Discovery Habits, she says, product teams make decisions every day. And our goal with continuous discovery is to infuse those daily decisions with as much customer input as possible. So, who could argue with that, really? So really, our question is, well, in which case, is continuous discovery, is it really the holy grail of customer research? So before I start digging into that question, I'm going to start with a short story. And this is a story, this is a fictional story, but it's based on what's actually happened with teams that I've worked with and that I've seen. So this is a story of Team Awesome and the search for the holy grail of customer research. So our story starts with a cross-functional agile team called Team Awesome. And the team are working on a digital product and are made up of several engineers, a designer, and a product manager. And being an agile team, Team Awesome passionately believe in being customer-centric. They strongly believe in the Agile Manifesto, and as the first principle of the manifesto outlines, their highest priority is to satisfy their customers through early and continuous delivery of valuable software. But the only problem is that the team actually rarely interacts with any of their customers. So it's very hard for them to know what is and isn't valuable to them. In fact, some of the team have never actually met any actual customers for their products, and most of their knowledge is either assumed or is secondhand information from others within their organization, such as sales and support, who have frequent interactions with customers. So the team decides that they need to do something about this. So someone in the team, probably the product manager, because as we know, all the best ideas come from product managers, hears about the concept of continuous discovery, decides that this is the answer to their situation. Continuous discovery will ensure that the team are always delivering real value for its customers, and is going to be their new mission. They're going to be seeking the holy grail of customer research. But the team isn't really sure what continuous discovery is. So, keen to find out more, they try to figure out what they should be doing. And once again, Teresa Torres has a definition of continuous discovery that they start with. So she says that teams should at a minimum have weekly touch points with customers by the team building the product, where they conduct small research activities in pursuit of a desired outcome. The only problem is that, like many teams, Team Awesome focus on just one of those key things, having weekly touch points with customers. Surely if the team can spend time with their customers on a weekly basis, that's going to really help them drive customer value. So the team set themselves the target of speaking to at least one customer a week, ideally more if they can. They even proudly keep track of how many customers they speak to. However, after a month or so, it soon becomes clear that their approach to continuous discovery might not be the holy grail after all. So because the team were fixated with speaking to as many customers a week as they could, they would take anyone they could get some time with, even if they're not necessarily representative of their customers. So getting bums on seats was the most important thing, not the right bums on seats. So the team were learning insights, but they were not always customer insights. And because the team didn't have much time to prepare for sessions with customers, these sessions tended to be unstructured, more of an informal chat than a well-structured research session. They would get a lot of irrelevant information, and when they did learn new insights, there was often little they could do about them because they were related things that were out of scope given the objectives of the team. And because the team were now speaking to customers on a weekly basis, they neglected some of the other insights that they'd previously been gathering, such as metrics, analytics, customer surveys, and customer feedback suggestions. The team felt that these weekly customer interviews on their own meant that they were sufficiently ticking the customer research box. And when the team did act on customer feedback, this was usually based on feedback from the 1 or 2 customers a week they were speaking to. And as they only spoke to 1 or maybe 2 customers a week, it took a long time to identify trends and signals. And this meant that they were often acting on single data points. So ultimately, the team ended up spending a lot of time and effort doing customer research, but poor quality customer research, which often resulted in the team having a false sense of security and making poor decisions. And to make things worse, all the time spent doing poor customer research meant that the team had less time to deliver the things that really would be valuable for their customers. So the team thought that they'd found the holy grail of customer research in the form of continuous discovery, but in reality, their version of continuous discovery ended up being more of a poison chalice. So continuous discovery had a very significant cost for the team, but the benefits were not outweighing those costs. So how can you ensure that you don't make the same mistakes as Team Awesome? Well, I'm going to run through how you can avoid 6 common continuous discovery pitfalls. So first of these are ill-judged targets. So if you remember our story of how Team Awesome chased the target of speaking to at least 1 customer a week, they sacrificed customer research quality for quantity. And because no design presentation is complete without a quote from Steve Jobs, quality is always more important than quantity. And whether you're taking baseball or customer research, this is often the case. The team sacrificed quality customer research because they were chasing targets, even if they were self-imposed targets. And this is why teams shouldn't be chasing customer touchpoint targets. I don't think it's a good idea to track how many customers a team speaks to. Instead, you should think about how can we gauge the overall quality of the customer research. And a great way to do this is to think about, well, what does good look like from a research perspective? And then maybe have a simple red, amber, green rating for, is the team following what we would define as good research? Are we seeing good planning? Are we seeing good engagement with the team? Are we seeing regular research? So some of those signals that we're looking for. And if teams don't have sort of weekly targets, it means that rather than having to try and speak to at least 1 customer a week, there's more flexibility there. So, for example, a team might spend a few days a month doing customer research sessions, and actually in doing so, they might end up not only speaking to more customers, but they might have might provide more time to plan those sessions, but also to analyze and to look for those signals within those sessions. But the important thing is that teams can dictate the cadence of those customer research sessions rather than having a target that they're trying to aim for. Now, our second pitfall is jumping to conclusions. So as we saw in our story, not only was Team Awesome not necessarily speaking to the right sort of people, they were often making risky decisions based on the 1 or 2 customers a week that they were speaking to. And when we're carrying out customer research, ultimately, we're looking for trends. If we keep seeing the same thing or hearing the same thing across a number of our customers, that's a trend that probably indicates, okay, so there's something here. Maybe there's some feedback we need to act on, or maybe this is something that would hold true across our customer base. However, so if we speak to, let's say 5 customers, 6 customers, we generally pretty soon start to identify some of those trends. But if a team is only speaking to 1 customer a week, so customer 1 week, another customer the second week, another customer third week, fourth week, and fifth week, it can take a long time to start to see some of those signals. Maybe after 4 weeks, 5 weeks, that's a month before the team can actually start getting some confidence and seeing some of those signals. Which is also why it can be a good idea for teams to have short bursts of customer research rather than aim for these weekly targets, because again, it makes it easier often to see some of those signals. And in terms of, again, making sure that teams aren't jumping to conclusions, this is where training the teams in good quality research and good quality user research is important. So, for example, looking at themes, looking at how to analyze that research, maybe carrying out some training or leveling up the team is a really good idea. So our third pitfall is onerous admin. So again, if you remember our story, Team Awesome were recruiting customers each week. And this research overhead meant that the team was spending a lot of time having to recruit, having to set up sessions with customers, and some of the pain that can come with that. And if you've ever been involved in manually having to set up research sessions, something like this might be quite familiar. A bit of research admin tennis. So, let me know which day you're free for a call. Okay, I can make these days. Well, what times can you make these days? I'm free at this time. Oh no, sorry, the team can't make that time, or that team. What about this other time? Oh, I can't make that. So we can have this kind of constant back and forth, and actually setting up sessions can take quite a lot of time and effort, and be quite an admin overhead for the team. So a really good way to reduce some of that admin overhead is to automate as much of that process as possible. So, for example, there's really great scheduling tooling such as Calendly that helps, which means that customers can self-serve. They can actually select, okay, these are the session times available. I can select the session time. If they need to change that, they can do that. Even if they need to cancel, they can do that all through the tool. And it also means you can set up things like reminders and thank you messages. So again, automate some of those aspects of the research. And another overhead that can often happen with continuous discovery is very often we have a cross-functional team, and a lot of the research overhead falls on either a designer or a researcher within that team in terms of planning sessions, scheduling sessions, running sessions, writing up sessions. So again, a really great way to help minimize and reduce some of that overhead is to have a rota within the team, so you can rotate some of those roles. So maybe it's not always the same individual running the sessions, or writing notes, or scheduling if there is a manual aspect to some of that scheduling. So again, it's it's not necessarily reducing some of that admin, but at least sharing the burden across the team. So our fourth pitfall is narrow research. So what do I mean by narrow research? So again, if you remember our story, Team Awesome felt that weekly customer interviews on their own meant that they were sufficiently ticking the customer research box. They were speaking to customers on a weekly basis, so they didn't need to worry about other types of customer insights, metrics or surveys that they'd previously been gathering. But if you think about customer research is much broader than just user interviews, customer interviews. There are lots of different ways to gather customer insights. There's surveys, card sorting, usability testing, metrics, analytics, all sorts of things. And customer interviews are really just one of those research methods. So it's important that teams don't limit themselves to just customer interviews. They don't think, right, continuous discovery equals customer interviews. And it's important to consider, well, what's the best research approach given what we're looking to learn? And a really great way to do this is to use something like the user research canvas to capture key aspects of research, such as goals, assumptions, users, and to really think about, okay, so given who we need to speak to, given what we want to learn, given the goals of this research, the objectives, what is the best approach? and have some of those conversations. If you want to find out more about the user research canvas and even download a template, that's all available on this website, UX for the Masses. So our fifth pitfall is erroneous users. So again, if you remember our story, Team Awesome didn't care who they spoke to as long as they spoke to someone. So for the team, getting bums on seats was more important than getting the right bums on seats. And of course, if you want to find out about your customers or even potential customers, you're not going to learn much from speaking to people who are not your customers or are not even representative of your customers. And when it comes to recruiting for research, it's very important to look beyond just demographics. You might be familiar with this example where you have very similar demographics, but you can have very, very different people, very different characteristics and behavior. So really, we're looking to, okay, how can we identify those customers, and how can we screen out those people that are not necessarily representative? And I think from a recruitment perspective, it's important to have a good variety maybe of methods of channels for recruitment. So that might include, if you've got a customer database, maybe utilizing that customer database with email invitations or that sort of thing. Setting up things like customer panels can be a great idea if you've got a small set of very engaged customers that you can reach out to and build a really strong relationship with. And utilizing maybe existing contacts within organizations, so things like sales contacts or sort of support contacts. So again, looking at how you can utilize those relationships. And where you've got maybe customers that have submitted things like suggestions or feedback or responded to a survey, often they're going to be the ones that are more open to further research, maybe interactions like interviews. So it's a good idea to maybe reach out and again continue the conversation with those customers. And as I've already mentioned, good customer research is about quality, not quantity. So, if you're speaking to 10 people, but those 10 people are not representative of your customers, that's not good quality customer research. So an important part of that is maybe screening out those participants that maybe don't meet your criteria. And that can be as simple as, maybe having a short survey so that people are signing up. You can find out a bit more about them and you can screen out those participants that maybe don't fit your criteria. Now, our final pitfall is structureless research. So again, if you remember our story, Team Awesome didn't have much time to prepare for sessions with customers, which meant that those sessions tended to be unstructured, perhaps more of an informal chat than a well-structured research session. And this invariably leads to a high signal-to-noise ratio, which meant the team were getting a lot of irrelevant information during those customer interactions. They were getting a lot of noise, really. And they were potentially getting a lot of information that they couldn't act on. And it was really hard to identify the important signals from all of that noise. And this is because the research was unfocused. And as Teresa Torres reminds us, the purpose of customer touchpoints is not just to conduct research, but research in the pursuit of a desired outcome. As she says, I've met many teams who are good at talking to customers, but they forget that the purpose of these customer touchpoints is to conduct research in pursuit of a desired outcome. So how do you ensure that research is focused and it has is in the pursuit of a desired outcome? Well, a really great way to do that is to utilize something like OKRs. If you're not familiar with OKRs, the O stands for objectives, KR, key results. So it's thinking about, well, what's the objectives? What are the outcomes that we're looking to drive? And how would we know that in terms of some key results? And OKRs can be really useful when thinking about sort of customer research. So for example, if you've got a team where maybe their desired outcome is to increase kind of product usage. So they might be looking at, well, if these are our objectives, how are some of the ways that we could do that? So for example, improving the onboarding experience, if customers have a better onboarding experience, they're more likely to continue to use the product and to get increase that product usage. And then maybe some of the ideas around getting started, again, how they can drive that opportunity. So things like, maybe a getting started tutorial or having boilerplate projects. So these OKRs can be really useful for thinking about features or capabilities or ways of driving an outcome, but also some of the research that might be useful in terms of validating some of these ideas or getting feedback. So, for example, if a team is planning a customer research session, they might look to focus that around a number of these, not just one, but multiple aspects of the objective. So, for example, if they're looking to increase product usage, they might look to have some more open-ended research to really explore and identify some of those opportunities. So, how are some of the ways that they could increase that product usage, and understand maybe some of the user's problem as part of that research to help identify, okay, these are some opportunities. And where there are ideas that they've identified, maybe to start to get some early feedback and to explore those. So that may be through prototypes or storyboards or early concepts. So really see, okay, maybe one of those ideas, for example, is a getting started tutorial. Maybe have a short prototype that they can mock up and start to get some feedback. They might find, well, actually, maybe that wouldn't have the desired impact that they thought it would. And then where ideas are either being delivered or have been delivered, can get feedback for those. And again, this is something that could even be within the same sort of session. So open with very broad in terms of the problem and opportunities, and then start to go narrow in terms of exploring ideas and maybe actually getting some feedback for some of the things being delivered or being delivered. So there was quite a lot there. So I'm going to quickly recap those 6 common pitfalls, and then again some of the ways to avoid those. So first of those is around ill-judged targets. So the importance of avoiding maybe weekly targets and focusing on sort of quality, not just the quantity, and maybe having things like red, amber, green indicators to think, okay, this is what good looks like. How can we judge the quality of our research being carried out? The importance of not jumping to conclusions. So again, that can be a temptation if speaking to maybe 1 customer a week, 2 customers a week, jumping to conclusions based on that. So really looking for those signals and maybe doing kind of short bursts of customer research to help identify some of those signals. The issue of erroneous admin and kind of painful admin. So in terms of automating as much of that research process and certainly recruitment process, but also in terms of sharing the workload of some of that admin. So maybe having a rota or rotating some of the responsibilities within a team. The risk of kind of narrow research, so sort of equating, okay, continuous discovery equals customer interviews. Research is much broader than that, and it's important to kind of step back and think, well, actually, given what we want to learn, who we want to speak to, what's the best approach? The risk of not speaking to the right people. So in terms of, again, just trying to get bums on seats rather than the right bums on seats. So in terms of being very mindful of maybe screening out participants, or being in terms of kind of criteria, and also in terms of multiple channels for recruiting participants. So we're speaking to the right sort of customers. And then finally, kind of structuralist research. So it's important that research is always in terms of a context of an objective and really trying to pursuit of a desired outcome. And things like OKRs and solution opportunity trees that we looked at as well can be a great way to help structure some of that research. And the eagle-eyed amongst you might have noticed that if you take the first letters from each of those pitfalls, it spells out I Jones. So really, to avoid the pitfalls of continuous discovery, you just have to be a bit more Indiana Jones, maybe perhaps without the waistcoat and whip. So coming back to our original question, is continuous discovery the holy grail of customer research or a poison chalice? Well, I think continuous discovery can be a brilliant approach. Obviously, there are some common pitfalls to avoid, but it's not the answer to every research question. And for well-established products with a good customer base to tap into, continuous discovery can be a really brilliant approach for for getting that feedback, for getting that discovery. But maybe for early stage products or for evaluating early concepts, I think more of a maybe traditional double diamond or even design sprint approach can be a better approach in terms of being able to sort of evaluate a concept and in terms of being able to get that feedback rather than something that might be quite drawn out if you're taking a continuous discovery approach. Again, coming back to kind of definition of continuous discovery, hand on heart, I'm not a huge fan of Teresa Torres's definition because I think that teams can often fixate on that weekly touch points with customers. I'd advocate a more simple definition. I think the important thing is regular customer research. It's not about weekly, it's not about targets, it's making sure that actually there's regular. If a team's going a long period without speaking to customers or doing customer research, that's not a good signal, but it doesn't necessarily have to be weekly. But again, important that it's by the team building the product, and I think most importantly, in the pursuit of a desired outcome. So we're not seeing research just for the sake of it, maybe as a tick, box ticking exercise. And then I think the important thing for any team is that they're not just jumping, you're not just jumping on a continuous discovery bandwagon. You're thinking about, okay, so what is the best approach here? And obviously regularly reviewing that approach as well. Maybe that's a regular retrospective to look at, okay, are we happy with how we're approaching this? Are we happy with, given what we want to learn, how we're going about doing this? So so continuous discovery can be a brilliant approach, but it's not the silver bullet, and it's not the right approach for every team necessarily. If you want to learn more about continuous discovery, I can certainly recommend this book, Continuous Discovery Habits by Teresa Torres. She also has some excellent presentations online that you can watch. And a great book for thinking about and learning about customer research in general, and certainly speaking to customers, is The Mum Test by Rob Fitzpatrick, especially useful for people with maybe little or no customer research experience. Okay, so thank you very much, and thanks for listening.